I'm Ryan, student pilot and aviation enthusiast. That was rough. We are going to have to work on that. But later. First, now, welcome to Ryan Flies. My name is Ryan. This is a YouTube channel about me and my experiences with flight aviation. A little bit about myself. I've been an airplane nerd, if you will, my entire life, since I was little. My father used to fly RC airplanes and gliders, and I was hooked on it since I was very, very small. I constantly tried to get into RC planes, and once I was finally old enough to be able to afford them and drag my father back into the hobby, I did. Growing up, we got into other forms of aviation, things like powered parachutes and ultralights. And eventually, when I was 21, 22 years old, I had enough of that. I wanted something with a heater and doors, I think was my argument at the time. And I went out and I started training in a Cessna 152 in Central Oregon. Ultimately, I fell short. I did not get my private pilot's license. There was a pause, but recently, up here in Portland, Oregon, I have begun flight training once again. And so I am back in the Cessna, the 150, at a training ground called Twin Oaks Air Park. A great little airport, plane rentals, awesome instructors, and I'm primarily based out of there. This YouTube channel serves as documentation. I just thought it would be fun. I thought it'd be fun to be able to share these with other people, both those I know and those I don't know. And so I'm hoping to meet people along the way. I also hope to explore some other avenues of flight, maybe get into soaring. That was something that I wanted to do, but ultimately decided to go through the private pilot's process first, and I will explain why. And then ultimately, I'm hoping that we can talk a bit about plane ownership, which is the goal for me. Flying airplanes is not cheap, nor is owning an airplane, and I really will have to explore high and low what the feasible for me ways are, and it may be renting, it may be building, it may be buying. We'll see. That's me in brief. I'll keep it short. I would like to get into really the first flight. We're going to take a peek. This is about, I think, 3 or 4 flights in since I picked it back up. Now remember, about 10-15 years ago I was flying, I was soloing, and so things were moving a little quicker, and we've already missed again 3 or 4 days. And so what you're going to see in today's episode is some stuff that you might not see normally on your first flight. Your first flight, often what's called a discovery flight, is typically going up with an instructor. He's going to take off, he's going to land, he's going to give you the controls and do some turns and maybe see some scenery, and really just kind of, again, I'll use that phrase, let the bug bite, and get you hooked. We, in this, are going to head straight out to an airport. We're going to practice some landings, and that's about it. So with that, let's get to it. All right, radios and electrical off. Where would that be? There, master avionics. Circuit breakers. Now these guys pop out, right? So we're just making sure. Okay, great. So we are now in the aircraft. I've got one GoPro set up, and what we're watching here is a fast forward version of me completing the pre-flight checklist. We've already gone through the exterior of the aircraft, checking everything from the fuel to the tires to the wings to the control surfaces, and now we're doing a quick run through on the interior of the aircraft, checking the gauges, checking the instruments, the avionics, the fuses, the electrical system, just to make sure that we are safe to take off. The pre-flight is by far the most important thing that you can do to ensure there are no problems once you're in the air.
Look around. You see, is there no chalk under that tire?
I pulled that one. I didn't.
No chalk here.
Okay. And then.
Cool. And then we say clear prop.
Clear prop.
Okay.
And on, right?
And on.
We got brakes on.
Brakes set.
Once the plane is started, there's a couple more checks to make. There's a couple more things that we have to do. But after that, the main thing is we're going to taxi down to the end of the runway. There's some radio calls, and I think you'll hear me here make those calls, which is fun, but also probably one of the most frightening things to me about flying an airplane. Not getting it back in the ground on one piece, not the fact that you are flying through the air. It's the fact that you gotta talk to other people up there into a microphone. Mic fright is real, and a lot of people have trouble with it, not just me. And so during these first few episodes, if you notice that I have hesitation getting onto the mic, if you hear me mess up calls, it's because I'm nervous. And I'm far more nervous to talk on the microphone than I am to these cameras, or than I am just flying the airplane.
Just Twin Oaks traffic. Who are we? 66589. Where are we? We're parking, and we're taxiing to 02. So it's Twin Oaks traffic, 66589er. Taxiing from parking to 02. I think it's on your left side. This guy? Yeah, if you push that button in. Okay. So, Twin Oaks, Cessna 66582. Taxiing, or sorry, 66589. Taxiing to 02. Twin Oaks. Bingo. Twin Oaks, Cessna 66589. Taxiing from parking to 02, Twin Oaks. Nicely done. Nicely done. We're ready to go. The only thing I'm seeing is another guy on our taxiway here, so we can start moving a little bit.
One of the interesting things, this is real basic, but one of the interesting things about taxiing an airplane is that you are taxiing with your feet, not with your hands. Your hand controls are going to do nothing. And while there are some things that you want to do in a crosswind or a quartering crosswind with the yoke, the control stick itself, it will not steer you on the ground. And so you have your rudder pedals, which are going to steer you, and on the tips of those rudder pedals, you have your brakes, and you can do what's called differential braking, where you can brake just one tire if you need to turn real tight. And so it takes a bit of getting used to, and if you see in some of these videos, I'm kind of weaving back and forth, or I have some uncoordinated stops, that's why I'm still getting my legs, no pun intended, with those rudder pedals, and it took probably for me 3 or 4 flights before it started to feel natural again. Another thing about taxiing is that you're obviously controlling the speed with the prop. The wheels have no motor on them, and so it can be it can take a little more energy to get you moving. You really have to add some throttle, and stopping is not just letting off the gas. You're going to coast, and so you got to hit those brakes. If you're taxiing off of grass onto the tarmac, you really have to get up there in the RPMs, which can be a little scary sometimes, and you'll see that in a few videos too.
Hitting our wings. I can't guarantee it, but if we're on center line, we're in the center of the taxiway. We're on center now, right? So let's go a little bit more to the right. This is just by sight, so I'd go a little bit more to the right, a little bit more to the right. I kind of like to think of it where if you actually put that line under your right leg, okay, what that feels like. Go a little bit more to the right, I think. But if your kneecap were to be on the line, hit the plane so that your kneecap is on that line. That's better.
Another thing that I wanted to talk about is how I get the voice in the cockpit, and that is just a simple, really cheap, I think $19 digital recorder that I got off of some very large online shopping marketplace, and through some connectors and Y cables, I'm able to plug in that and record what is going through our headsets. It's not perfect. It's hard to get the audio from that to sync up with the GoPros at times. So I'm looking for better ways to do that. And I think the first few episodes here, you're really going to see me struggle with that audio. I'll do the best I can.
Textbook says is no faster than a brisk walk. It's not the speed you want to be at, which this is a nice speed here. My old instructor liked to haul ass and always made me nervous. I think I told you he was a little wild. He was a wild child, you did.
I may add a little
The right rudder on you to get on center line. There we go. Pull power all the way in. Keep your hand on the throttle just in case of emergencies. When you need to pull it out, we'll have our hand there. And we're going to drop our heels to the floor. There we go. Right rudder to maintain center line. At 55 knots is rotation. With that shimmy, we can just get a little bit of nose back and then we'll get rid of that shimmy. There's
We're just looking to climb, obviously, get some air underneath us, give us the ability to, if something were to go wrong and we need to glide either back to the airport or somewhere safe to land. And so the idea is to get altitude, and from there exit the pattern. So every airport has basically a big oval or a rectangular traffic pattern around it. Twin Oaks is no different. Once we get up to pattern altitude, we're going to make radio calls to safely exit the pattern. And today, we're heading to a different airport. And I believe where we wound up was Aurora. And so Aurora is a towered airport. In this instance, to not overwhelm me, my instructor was nice enough to take the radio calls over the towered airport. And while some of the radio calls can be simpler and there's less of them, it can be even more intimidating because you're talking to an actual person, and sometimes they'll make requests or they will ask for a response, and you got to be quick and very short on those responses. You don't want to clog up the airways while you sit there and mumble and hesitate. And so he was nice enough to handle those while I handled the landing. It was a fairly nice day without a lot of wind, and I think in all I did about 5 or 6 lanes. And we're using runway 35. The first one we did a full taxi back. That was to again give me some experience in taxiing, and so we got off the runway. We went back to the beginning of the runway where we asked for permission to go up, fly again. I got another takeoff under my belt, and then we just did some loops, but circles in the pattern where I landed the plane a number of times.
And so we're good to party in the pattern this way because we're now getting up and out above the pattern.
Practice for the day. It can be overwhelming. It can be nerve-wracking, to be honest. And sometimes you hit a wall where you're not going to progress any further. And while I didn't hit the wall very hard, and certainly there was no frustration, I felt like I had had enough, like I crammed enough in my head, and it was time to fly back. And so I think you'll see a short visit, for a time lapse of me heading back to Twin Oaks. And from there we land. Now, Twin Oaks is, as I mentioned, small. It's not just small with its capabilities or its facilities. It's just got fuel, it's got work, it's got everything you need. It's a small, short, skinny runway. And so on this one, my instructor was nice enough to really be heavy-handed on the controls. And while he said that I pretty much landed the plane, I could feel him. He helped me keep it straight quite a bit. Because it's going to be a few more flights before I'm fully comfortable on that runway. And that's really it. That is the first episode. I'll keep this short. I don't want to go on too long. I mean, it was anything really fantastic. What I'm looking forward to, I'm hoping soon here we'll have a second GoPro, get some outside shots, get some additional camera footage, make it a little more interesting. Test my chops when it comes to video editing a little bit. And hopefully start to document some of the more fun aspects of flights, getting to explore, again, going to different ones. And hopefully we'll get some episodes in here where we can talk to some different individuals and visit some good places. So with that, I will leave you, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much.